We're here with Ann Theis, the station director at Denver Open Media, and I'll be interviewing her on her position here. Hi, Ann.
Hi, Bailey.
So, how'd you become interested in this career?
Well, when I was in college, I was actually a cultural anthropology major, and I studied that for several years, and I really love traveling and culture and talking to people and all that, and hearing people's stories and backgrounds. But while I was in anthropology, I sort of was, as I was getting further along into it, I sort of realized that there wasn't much of a real career path for anthropology, that really you have kind of limited options, and that you could be either a professor or you could be, write papers and things like that, which I didn't really want to do either of those. And around the same time, I started really getting interested in documentary films. So I saw a natural connection between documentary film and anthropology. So I actually created my own major I went to Antioch College, so they're very open to, letting you design your own curriculum. So I actually combined the two majors. So I created one that was cultural anthropology and communications. So I took half of my credits in video production and the other half in cultural anthropology. And then my final project, I did a 36-minute documentary about female shoe shiners in Minneapolis. So while I was at Antioch, one of the things that's really unique about Antioch's curriculum in the video department is that the president of the college, who was also the head of the department, of the communications department, was one of the founding people of public access. So he had gone all over the country, like I think in the 70s, helping to start up public access stations all over the country. So the curriculum for the communications department, instead of like most colleges, it would be mass communication, right? Learn how to be a broadcast major, how to be a journalist, like things like that. They actually taught the importance of community and local media, so that you didn't necessarily have to like strive to be, the head of or like working as a producer or a newscaster or something like that on a major network, but just that, there's important voice in every single person in a community. So being interested in anthropology, that really resonated with me because, in anthropology, you want to hear people's stories and understand where they come from and why they understand the world the way they do and do the things that they do. And that's kind of the same thing as public access, where you're instead of me as an anthropologist, kind of examining you and like filtering through my own experiences what I think you're experiencing and describing you, I'm actually teaching you to have your own voice, and so that you can tell people what you think and create your own show on television.
That's really cool. Truly. No, that was like really well put. I didn't know that, and it's totally like putting the hands of the people to do that, rather than trying to seek out stories maybe that don't even want to be told.
Mm-hmm.
Could be interesting to you, but what's really interesting is what people are interested in, and that displays a more accurate view of culture because it really is like based on the people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really cool.
Yeah, I don't know if you've studied anything yet in school. I mean, I think one of the things, in anthropology, there's like a lot of sort of different styles of anthropology. And there was like one of the later versions of anthropology was a postmodern approach, where basically they're just like, everyone just sort of admitted you can't be subjective, right? I can't look at you and make a judgment without it filtering through my own lens of the world. And so, they just said, well, we're just going to do anthropology. We're going to look at culture. We're going to look at community. And we just admit up front that this is, it's filtering through me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what made me start really realizing when I got to that level of understanding of anthropology, that anthropology is, in that way, if you think of it, it's something real. Like if you think Margaret Mead knows everything about the cultures that she studied, you're delusional because she's filtering everything. So you have to take that into account. And then how do you take that into account? Because then you have your own filters to also filter that information through. So
Yeah.
it's better to just
So it could
cut
end up-
down on the filters and let the person try to tell the story themselves.
Exactly, because, I mean, it could get so twisted. The person who made it, the person who's seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
Or any, like, if you have a person filming it, it's how they want to see it. Person editing it, it's
Yeah.
how they want to portray it. Yeah.
Exactly. And then how people interpret how you've edited and how you've shot, like the framing that you use, the
Yeah.
angles of the camera that you use, the questions you ask, where you put cuts. I mean, obviously, you know that working with the youth group and that you can cut anything that you want. You're going to be able to cut up everything I'm saying right now, and you could make me say something quite different or sound very much better or much stupider, or, you have a lot of power when you're editing something.
Yeah, definitely. Editing is storytelling in itself, regardless of the material. You could almost do the complete opposite of what the person wanted. So that'd be hard to work with people too, right? Like, is it frustrating to work with other people?
In what way?
Like, if you have a task at hand and, you're not doing everything, you're splitting up the work, so you have a camera person, an editing person, like, has there been conflicts in that? Like, you all have a clear idea what you want the product to be, but it still doesn't turn out how you want? Does that happen?
Oh, yeah. I think that definitely happens in any kind of team collaboration. I mean, even in UC and youth group, every week we do
definitely.
shows, and, I think it's hard to be collaborative and open and democratic for everybody. Yet, so everyone has an equal stake in it, but then everyone has an equal voice in it, and then, perceptions are different. So I guess you kind of need to hope to come to some kind of an alignment where maybe it's not exactly what you wanted, exactly what I wanted, but there's something in the middle that we both kind of like and appreciate and work towards.
Sometimes it could be kind of a magical thing, like creating music with other people. It's kind of like the same thing, like once you kind of align with each other and get, know each other, you can create something like amazing. Is it kind of like that?
Yeah, I think that it definitely can be like that. And I think when, like with First Fridays or because I don't get to work very often with the other staff here, so most of the people that I'm working with or helping on productions are, like still beginning or still learning, and so it's not like I'm working with my peers necessarily. But when I get to work with my peers, it's like a different level where I appreciate, Tony's directing. They appreciate my being able to like set up the studio and do all the technological stuff in the studio, make sure it's working, and run the audio board. Chris is really good at camera, so you just kind of know everybody's strengths and you trust each person in that role. Do
you think you'd rather be doing that?
You mean like just working on productions more
Yeah.
continually? I do miss working on productions, but I don't know. I think you have to have a balance of everything. So I think I think I have a pretty good role in the sense that I do get to do First Fridays. I get to work with the youth on Wednesdays. I'm not doing my own project per se, but I am actually working on my own show outside of here. It's taking a really long time to put together because I just hardly have any time outside of here and whatever. I have other things going on in my life. But I am working on my own show.
Really?
So, yeah.
What's it about?
It's called City in the Making. And I'm working with this other woman she doesn't really know anything about media, but she went to school for urban planning and city planning, and that's one of my just kind of side interests.
Yeah.
It's a lot like with community. Growing up in a really small town in Minnesota, going to college in Southern Ohio, moving to New York, living in Madrid, moving here, living outside Chicago. Like, I've lived in a lot of different places, and I've really traveled a lot of places and seen how differently cities set themselves up and how differently it feels to be a citizen in that, based on what the public transportation is like, based on density, based on building, based on green space, based on all these things that is, somebody has the power to make these decisions. So, and it really gives a good sense of community or a lack of a sense of community. So I'm just really fascinated by that, how it creates community. So
are you documenting that? Like,
well, what we're doing right now is we're just we haven't even done one show yet. We've basically just created our intro, our graphics, and done a field shoot, or just like a vox pop, like I have you guys do for youth group. Just asking people, like, what do you even know what city planning is? Do you know how it affects your life? Do you, just kind of basic things? And then we're going to bring in someone from the city to talk about, like, what their role is and how they view their job and how it creates community. And then a community activist who works to, like, push, to help to, like a community activist who basically is, like, going to city council meetings or going to city planning meetings and saying, hey, like, don't forget about these aspects, and making sure that they create community. So those two kind of sides of it. So that's kind of how we're going to do the first episode, to just
should do it here, and how the light rail should stop at DOM.
Well, I was thinking that it would be kind of fun to go film that, and that could be one of our, like, episodes, is talking about, we're actually, so my, like, co-producer, she just had a meeting today with the bicycle people, and they want to do a show with us and talk about, like, bikeability in Denver and the growth of that.
So you're here now, and you've been here for?
Like 6 years.
So, what made you decide on Denver? Was it Denver Open Media that made you decide on Denver, or do you really like the city and the community?
Well, I really like Colorado. So I had never been when I guess the first time I came to Colorado was when I was 27 or 28. And I had been, the mountains I had seen, it was like the Appalachian Mountains or like the Pyrenees in Spain and stuff. They were beautiful mountains and everything, but not like the Rocky Mountains. And so I just was like floored when I first saw the mountains. I couldn't even believe that they were just so expansive and so big. And then I just started vacationing here like every year. So when I was in New York, Jose and I would just always, we would fly here every summer for like my birthday and spend we'd fly into Denver and just rent a car and just drive through the mountains and camp and raft and all that kind of stuff. And so I didn't really know anything about Denver, but I was like, oh, it's a city and it's by the mountains. That's great.
Yeah.
So I started becoming like, the more I became like disenchanted with New York, I became more enchanted with Colorado. And so I started looking at different job opportunities here. And then the IT director at the job I was at in New York at Manhattan Neighborhood Network knew Tony, who's the executive director here, because they were trying to work on a collaborative Drupal project. And so he knew that I wanted to move out here, so he was like, and Tony was looking for someone they were just starting up Denver Open Media, and they were looking for someone to run it. So we met at a conference, and he pretty much just like hired me. He like interviewed me in a hot tub because we were at a hotel. We were just all sitting around like just friends, and then he's just like, so blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, and he's like, all right, well, that sounds good. Like, let's talk next week. And
it's pretty much a done deal.
Yeah.
Wow, that was easy. Yeah, that's fun. Let's see.
I wonder if Tony would even remember that.
Probably. Well, it depends. All right, so I guess one of my questions was if you belong to any professional organizations or unions, which obviously Denver Open Media is an independent nonprofit organization, but are there any other ones that you were involved with, like in New York or?
What you mean, like now, like that I'm associated with now,
yeah,
or that I've worked for in the past?
I guess
I mean,
both.
like professional association. I mean, like the Alliance for Community Media, which I'm on the board of. It's a national organization that tries to promote community and public access across the whole country, and so I'm on the board of that organization as it's kind of equal opportunity representative. So it's a little funny being a white woman, but I guess at least I'm not a white man. So, but it's just like nothing was really happening with that, and I think that the that organization has older people in it, and they don't. Obviously, the name of it is EO, equal opportunity, instead of diversity or inclusiveness or some more kind of modern word. So
Yeah.
so me and I'm the representative for that to the national board, and then there's a chair of the equal opportunity. So him and I are a little bit younger and trying to change things.
Well, that's big. That sounds really important.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time. I have meetings like almost every week.
You do a
I have to
lot.
fly 3 times a year. I have to fly to another city for like a 2 to 3 day board meeting.
So that's
And then
when
the
you went to
conference.
Miami.
Yeah. No. Miami was a different thing. That was for the Knight Foundation because of a grant that we got. But yeah, when I just was gone to Minneapolis, that was for the board meeting. And then I'll be going May for the conference.
So part of it, that how it worked out was that you continued to travel quite a bit for different
Yeah, not as
conferences and stuff.
internationally as I would prefer, but yeah, I've gotten to see a lot of cities in the United States. So
That's cool.
yeah.
Different adjectives. I was like, that's really awesome. I mean it sincerely. So
Fascinating.
that'd be a lot better. Just like over the top, corny. Awesome. Okay. So, what are some of the rewards and challenges of this career?
Well, I mean, the reward is, I get to work in media. I get to work with people every day. I get to work with people from very diverse backgrounds, and teach people how to use media, to work with people using media to solve people's technology problems when they have problems in here. That's rewarding. It makes me feel good and needed. The challenges are lack of funding, lack of support in the community, and not like there's not enough awareness or understanding of why this is important, like why it's important for every single person to have a voice in a society where, you know, mainstream media rules the airwaves, where there's just kind of this generic national identity that, you know, so they have the same commercial that airs in Milwaukee as in LA, as in New York, as in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. You know, it's like people are very different in all those places, and, you know, there's this kind of national generic identity that is kind of ascribed to everybody. So there's not local perspective, not local voice. Even the national news, which used to be very local, not the local news, which used to be very local, is very generic. And, you know, they're just like, the most local they get is they'll talk about shootings that happened in your neighborhood, some dumb little stuff, but they don't talk about real important issues and go into deep investigation of stuff that's happening in the community. And they're even doing commercials now. It's like, oh, what's going to be on American Idol next? You know, it's horrible. So it's, you know, it's just really important. It's really not understood, the importance of it. And I think that's a huge challenge. That's the biggest challenge.
And like, it's really filtered in mainstream media as well. Like, I was just watching this movie about, it was called Scientists Under Attack, and it was about Monsanto and just kind of like the control of that. And there was this scientist that studied for like 25 years on GMOs, and he went on TV for 150 seconds talking about it. He like got fired from his job, like was banned from talking to any of his like fellow professors. Wow. And they there's another group that wrote this amazing article that Nature magazine accepted, but then there's like these companies that set up like fake opinions, like fake people saying fake things and critiquing it in the magazine, like, oh, we don't want anything to do with this. And there's a thing like BP bought out or contributed like $500 million to this university. So they got control of like what a public school gets to think. There's certain questions they couldn't ask, certain things they couldn't talk about. So a public place can't have a public opinion and public research.
Yeah.
Public TV can't have public opinion and public research. I mean,
It's it's almost like we're getting to this point, or we're going to get to this point. I mean, we're already past the point, but no, like people aren't realized it yet, that we're going to have a separation of like corporation and state, just like we had to have a separation of church and state. You know, it's because it's just too much. I mean, it's the same thing. Like if you were going to go to like a Catholic school, right? You're not going to be able to, or when, you know, religious schools, Christianity dominates this. I mean, still does to a large degree, dominates the public schools, but in certain schools it's more prominent, and you can't question evolution or, you know, creationism, or, you know, there's like these kind of, you know, if you're going to go to a Catholic school, you can't question the Bible, you can't question anything, and it's like, it's just what you're saying. It's like if corporations are have gajillions of dollars to lobby Congress, and those people are setting the rules, and then they buy schools out, and they're going to have the same control as the church, like a Catholic church would have over its curriculum. But we're not recognizing that.
Yeah, it actually made a relation science to religion, and how controlling it is, and how like one opinion and this is how it is, and everyone has to think this way. Also, they talked about how technology should be something that we vote on. Like we vote on all sorts of different types of laws and governments and everything, but not technology. And I think that relates to media too. Because we don't have a say. It is what it is. What advice would you give someone interested in this field?
Well, there's station managers, station directors, and pretty much every TV channel. I mean, there is, but it's just, I mean, I think...
it's kind of a special circumstance.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to kind of be a little bit of jack of all trades in a certain regard. You have to understand all different aspects of production. You have to understand, you know, you have to understand a little bit of like IT. I mean, I don't really know IT that much, but I get it enough that I could actually have a conversation with my network administrator, at least so it makes some sense. And yeah, I mean, I guess you were going to talk about salary, and just like the pay is definitely not great, because it's nonprofit, you know. I mean, most nonprofit jobs, the pay is not what, you know, market value for a commercial type, you know, channel would be. But, you know, yeah, I mean, I think you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with just like living at like a normal standard of living, and that you're not expecting to be driving BMWs and be really rich. So
would you say it's definitely more fulfilling than a station director at like a news station or something?
Yeah. I mean, so my partner of like 11 years or whatever we met at a nonprofit. We met at Manhattan Neighborhood Network. So he was the chief engineer when I moved to New York and started working at M&N. And so we started there, he didn't start there, but like I started there, and we met there at a nonprofit, but that was the only time in his career that he's ever worked for a nonprofit. So he's always worked for Time Warner, HBO, CNN, Comcast. Like he works for all of the kind of people that not that I hate them, but like kind of am trying to provide an alternative to.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, like I definitely could have he could have helped me easily move in. Like we worked 3 blocks apart in New York. I was at M&N, he was 3 blocks away working at CNN. I mean, he could have gotten me a job there. He could have gotten me in there. And I was just like, he would offer all the time when I got really frustrated at different things with the job. And he's like, come on, get a job here. I can, you know, get you to be a producer or something. And I was like, that's not what I want to do with my life. I don't want to do that. Like, I would rather quit working and go make documentaries and travel or something. That would be the other thing that I would want to do. I wouldn't want to just toe the line and do bad television. I mean, maybe I could work for a place like HBO or something like that, because they're doing some cool documentaries, cool programming and stuff, but I wouldn't want to work for CNN. I wouldn't work for,
Well, I'm
I
glad you
couldn't do
didn't.
that. I would, whatever frustrations, any job has a level of frustration. But then if you have that same, like similar frustration and it's just this vapid, meaningless, actually polluting the, community with, ridiculous content, then on top of it, your soul dies. And so even on my days when I'm very frustrated here, at least I always know that, I'm trying to, my intent is to do good, and our intent of our organization is to do good. So there's always that to help lift up any bad days.
Yeah. And then if you had bad days at CNN, it would just be horrible.
Yeah, because then you just feel like it's all meaningless. Like the only thing you have is like a little extra change in your pocket.
Wow, that is so amazing. Like that, yeah, that's really powerful. I think it's important. I mean, people are always like, it's not about money, it's about like being happy, but people are like, oh, well, I'm happy if I have money. I'm happy if I feel like I'm not starving and have a good house and everything, but.
And some people are, and that's fine. That just wouldn't be me.
Yeah. It's like, I get it, but I feel like all people like have that, compassion somewhere inside them that they just want to like help other people and do meaningful things.
Yeah, you'd think so. I haven't always found that to be true.
By
age
stuff.
And I think it does.
Life.
I mean, I see a lot of people, honestly, that work in public access that aren't really like impassioned by that, that they don't have that mission of like putting the power in the hands of the people. They're just bureaucratically doling out a camera, bureaucratically doling out the studio, bureaucratically doling out channel time. And and I don't, like sometimes, and that's the suckiest part of my job is that you do have to do that to some degree. I have to be a cop and make sure that people return the equipment when they're supposed to return the equipment, that it's not broken, that if they do break it, that they pay, or that if they break the rules, because otherwise it's just total chaos and people could just do whatever they want. So you have to have control over things, but if that becomes the dominant focus and you end up just becoming very bureaucratic and not caring about people's voices, then, it becomes a problem.
So you think that's like balanced pretty well?
Here? I think so. I'm trying to. I think it goes back and forth sometimes where, I have to be more restrictive or learn to let go. And,
Whoa, you cannot put that on the station. Before 10.
Yes. I do have a little bit of a control freak in me, just a little, for those of you who know me.
So that's fulfilled too.
Yes. My sense of fairness, my sense of control, all those things, yes.
Wow. Truly a perfect fit. Let's see. Ongoing training, education. Do you feel like you're always learning, right?
Yeah, I wish I could be doing more of that for sure. But I would like to think that I'm always learning. I think what I learn here is more and more like new technology or different technologies where I end up learning just more on the job or going to conferences or more about, even just like the larger DOM gets, the more I have to learn about budgets and finance and managing. Even though I had a bigger staff and a budget at M&N when I left there, things were a little more loosey-goosey there, and it's hard. I just got a budget, like, here, you get, whatever, $400,000 to buy equipment this year, tell me what you want to spend, and I spent it and gave the receipts, basically.
Yeah.
But here it's a lot different. I have to think about, because we don't get money like we did in New York, I have to think about my salary, I have to think about Bart's salary, I have to think about how all that stuff gets paid for and try to make sure that we get enough income coming in. And then manage a bunch of interns who aren't getting paid. And so I have to be like, oh my God, you poor people have to do all this work and I can't pay you anything.
If it's possible for a single person in mainstream media to have an effect or an influence, but I really don't think that that's their I think they're kind of told what to say, or they need to follow the trends of other local stations and stuff like that.
Have you ever seen the show Newsroom? It's a new series on HBO. You should check that out. It's just only one season so far. I think the new season's going to start pretty soon. That is a really good show, and it really hits at the importance. Like, there's, this woman who's like a producer and this guy who like really believe in like old school true journalism and like really reporting news and not all the crap and the fluff that's on the channels right now. And it's just like really good. So you see them trying to do it, and then the pushback that they get and the fights that they get themselves into because of it. Because there's corporate parents. The corporate parents have subsidiaries, and all this stuff is tied together. And like, it's just like what we were talking about before with BP. It's like, no, you can't say that, and you don't have that separation of corporation and media, separation of corporate and schools, separation of corporate and government. All corporations are just intertwined into everything. So. So that's a really good show. So I think that it's possible, but I think it's a huge fight that you have to do, and it really depends. I think, like, that's why I really like HBO, because I feel like they put shows on and allow shows to be put on, like, created and, like, run through HBO that are controversial like that. Like, The Wire is one of the best television shows ever produced. It's like my favorite TV show ever. So I think that stuff can be done, but it's usually more in documentary form. It's not done on, it's done more on the side, like on like a premium channel like HBO or something. You don't see it on, you're not going to necessarily see that on ABC and NBC and Fox and stuff like that.
I bet a lot of people, like, don't buy those premium channels. I
mean, the
don't.
thing now is like with the internet. I mean, it's so easy to find that stuff for free. So that's one good thing. But you have to know about it. You have to search for it. It's not just like TV just comes at you,
So what just dawned on me, do you think that a place like this is more like expressive for each individual person and like maybe their peers, rather than making a citywide impact? Like, do you think, because I mean, at least my show, like our show, any shows that I've had like 5 viewers. So
well, you don't know that. I mean, you have no idea. That's the thing that, again, it's this, we don't have any idea what our viewership is. I get people that call me and say, "Oh, dude, there's no audio on 57. What's going on over there?" Or, "Hey, I just saw this show and I don't know what it is and I can't figure out what it is. Can you help me find what show it is?" I mean, people do call and ask. There are people watching. We just don't know how many.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely people see it.
Yeah.
I mean, I have myself been flipping through channels, not even paying attention to like where I was in the channel lineup, and stop and I'm like watching and I'm like, this is interesting. And then all of a sudden I'm like, hey, that's my channel.
Really?
Yeah, like I actually didn't, like hadn't seen the show before, and I didn't realize that I was on DOM, and it was a really well done and interesting show.
Wow.
And
cool.
yeah, so I mean, if I do that and I know the content and everything, I think that I'm sure that there's other people that are plenty impressed when they're like flipping through and seeing something that's thoughtful and interesting and different.
Do you think that there might need to be like more commercials or advertising? And
yeah, I'm sure definitely we need to do that.
I mean, what if there's just like this huge documentary and people are just on revolt and only watch it? The thing is, like, I don't know if it was I mean, there is stuff that might like offend certain people, like the way that like mainstream stuff is set up to like not really offend people. Although I'm sure it still does.
Offends me.
Yeah. And especially, yeah. But so, do you think there needs to be any additional like filtering, or do you think that would be really prohibitive and like wrong.
On DOM.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, that's, I mean, one of the major points to public access is that it is like a public soapbox, right? It's protection of free speech, right? So that anybody could have a voice. I mean, it's, you know, that's why I think it's the challenge for public access today is to stay relevant, right? There's YouTube, right? All the people, I mean, God, you know, public access has been around for 30 years, and I'm sure there's more people that have watched and put shows on YouTube than, you know, all of public access combined now, you know, and it's...
Probably.
And it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's essentially the same thing. The thing that's different is, well, the most obvious, which is that it's on cable, and it's local here in your community. You don't have to have internet. You do have to have cable. But it's you know that it's the local person in your community. Like if I see you on that, I know that's a girl that lives somewhere in Denver area or whatever, and that's different. So you don't necessarily know where people are on YouTube, and a sense of community. So YouTube is a virtual community where you don't have like people that think of all the people that you've met since you've been here, and like the sense of I mean, it feels like a family to you, right? Like there's a sense of community, sense of family here, and you have people that you actually have equipment that you can use, like good quality. You can learn to use the equipment better. Where on YouTube, you know, you're just always going to be with your
whatever you can
your little
get.
camera.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and a lot of people that were on YouTube and then had access to this place, I know that they have taken advantage of that and like made their content there like skyrocketed, like way better quality, and like there's that community where you're not just watching someone else, but you're actually observing someone else doing something. Yeah, the community is probably my favorite part. Yeah. Yeah, the relationships. So, let's wrap this up. I would say you're probably passionate about it. We kind of covered that it inspires you and that you love it. Could you see yourself doing something different in the future?
I don't know. I mean, I think the other, like, I think just some of the other things that are kind of similar, like I talked about, like, I thought about going back to school for city planning or urban planning, like getting involved in more of that. I don't know if I ever will or not, but I would be interested in being more engaged in that in some way. But then I can't really ever see my life without media somehow. And I, you know, like working with youth. I like teaching younger people, like, to really, you know, take hold of that at such a young age, because, you know, the difference between working with you guys and working with adults, adults can intellectualize it in a different way than young people can, but youth can embrace it in a way that adults typically can't. And then it's like with you the rest of your life. And I mean, a lot of, like, when I worked in New York in the youth channel, like, a lot of my youth that I worked with are working in public access. They're working at another youth media center. They're, you know, that's something that they've gone on to also do, like what I did from my mentors, which instead of going into mainstream media has gone into some kind of alternative or community-based media. Not all of them, but just like a lot of them, and people that if there wasn't public access, if there weren't these opportunities, they would have just tried to, you know, go into corporate media.
Yeah, whenever I say, like, I'm doing this type of stuff, like, oh, you could make a lot of money doing that. I'm like,
I could.
I guess so. If I'm like famous producer, I mean, I'm new estate, no.
Yeah, so I can't see, so I think either doing that or, you know, maybe at some point going back to actually, you know, looking at making documentaries or traveling. Traveling is one of my other passions, so I think traveling, media, community, cities.
Awesome. Mountains.
And mountains too, yes.
And this was Ann Theis, not Ann Thesis. Bailey Bermond, not Bermond. Thank you for watching. Yeah, there was a few.